The war was finally over, or so humanity thought. The alien invaders had been defeated, pushed back into the far reaches of space. The Earth was free again, its people rebuilding, mourning and healing from the scars of battle. But in the shadow of victory, something darker loomed, a betrayal that would shake humanity to its core. Commander Jensen stood at the head of a large, high-tech command room aboard the flagship Vanguard. The crew worked quickly, their fingers flying over holographic screens, sending data and relaying orders. A sense of urgency hung in the air, thick and unyielding. Even though the war against the alien threat was officially over, Jensen knew this was just the beginning. Something much worse was about to unfold. The traitors who had secretly sold humanity to the alien invaders were still out there, and they would stop at nothing to destroy what was left of the human race. They had worked in the shadows, manipulating politics and military strategy, all while pretending to be loyal. Now they were scattered across the stars, their location unknown, their motives hidden deep within their minds. Jensen's mission was simple: track them down, bring them to justice, and ensure humanity's survival. But it wasn't going to be easy. The traitors were powerful and cunning, with resources that could rival the best of Earth's military. They had already betrayed humanity once, and Jensen feared that they might do it again if given the chance. "Commander, we found something." Lieutenant Harper's voice broke through the tension. She was one of Jensen's most trusted officers, sharp and quick, with a mind that could solve any problem. Jensen turned to face her, his heart skipping a beat. "What is it, Harper?" Harper's fingers hovered over the console, her eyes locked on the screen. "We've intercepted a transmission. It's encrypted, but the source points to a station on the edge of the Sol system. The station is abandoned, but there's something strange about the signal. It was sent just before the final battle with the aliens." Jensen felt a cold chill run down his spine. The timing was too perfect. The transmission came from a time when humanity thought they had already won. The fact that someone was sending messages to the enemy at that moment could only mean one thing: the traitors had been active during the war. "Get a team ready, Harper. We're heading to that station," Jensen ordered. There was no time to waste. Within hours, the Vanguard was on course, heading toward the Forgotten Station, a relic from the early days of space exploration. The station was old, long abandoned after it had served its purpose as a relay post for deep space communications. The fact that it was still functional after all these years was strange enough, but the hidden transmission only added to the mystery. As the Vanguard approached the station, Jensen's mind raced. Who could have sent that message? What did it mean? Was it a trap, or was it a clue leading them to the traitors? Every scenario ran through his mind as he gave the orders to dock. The station loomed ahead, its metal surface battered by years of neglect. Its communication array, long disused, still sent out faint signals, as though it were trying to communicate with something beyond its reach. The Vanguard slowly docked, and Jensen gathered his team, ready for whatever they would find. Harper led the team into the station, her sharp eyes scanning every corner. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of dust and forgotten history. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional hum of old machinery still running somewhere deep within the walls. It was clear that the station hadn't been used in years. As they moved deeper into the station, the first signs of life appeared. There were fresh footprints in the dust, and the power, though low, seemed to be functioning. Someone had been here recently. "This isn't right," Sergeant Davis muttered under his breath. He was the team's heavy weapons specialist, and his instincts were never wrong. Jensen nodded in agreement. "Keep your guard up," he said. "Something's not adding up." They reached the central control room, where the transmission had originated. The large room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of monitors that flickered on and off. The walls were covered in old, outdated technology, but in the center of the room stood a small console, still active and sending a weak signal into deep space. Harper approached the console, her fingers flying over the controls, trying to decipher the encrypted data. "I'm in," she said after a moment. "The transmission came from here, but the message itself, it's been wiped. Whoever did this was careful, very careful." Jensen clenched his fists. "So, we have a ghost. Someone has been trying to hide their tracks. But why? What are they trying to cover up?" Just then, the ground beneath their feet shook, and an alarm blared through the station. The sound of doors slamming shut echoed through the corridors. Jensen's heart raced. This was a trap. "Move," he shouted, pushing his team into action. "We need to get out of here now." The team rushed toward the exit, but the station seemed to be alive with hostility. The doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. A new kind of fear began to creep in as the reality of the situation settled in. They were not alone. Jensen's voice cut through the tension. "Harper, get that door open. Now." The sound of gunfire echoed down the hallway, and the team returned fire, their shots echoing through the station. There was no way out without a fight. Whatever was happening, they were being hunted. "We need answers," Jensen shouted. "Now." But with every corner they turned, they found more enemies waiting, more shadows closing in on them. Whoever had sent that message was far more dangerous than they'd imagined. And as the team fought their way through the station, Jensen couldn't help but wonder, was this just the beginning? Were the traitors closer than they realized? The hunt had only just begun. The air in the abandoned station was thick with tension as Commander Jensen and his team pushed forward, their weapons drawn and ready. The station had turned from a relic of the past into a deadly maze. The flickering lights above them only added to the oppressive atmosphere, casting long shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Jensen kept his focus, his mind racing. The encrypted transmission they had intercepted, the strange footprints, and now the sudden attack. It was all connected. But how? Who had set this trap? And why? The traitors were supposed to be hiding, not making such a bold move. This wasn't just about cover-ups anymore. Something much more dangerous was at play. "Commander, we're getting reports from the Vanguard," Harper called out over the comm. "It's not just us. The station's been active for days. There's something out there. A ship. It's lurking near the far side of the station." Jensen's eyes narrowed. "A ship? Any identification?" Harper paused. "It's too far out to get a clear read, but we're seeing a large energy signature. It's not human. It's definitely alien." The news hit like a cold wave. The aliens they had defeated were supposed to be gone, sent fleeing after humanity's great victory. The idea of another alien faction lurking out here, near their borders, was disturbing. But it also confirmed one thing. This wasn't just about traitors. The stakes were higher. Much higher. "Keep tracking it. I need updates every minute," Jensen ordered. He turned to Sergeant Davis. "Davis, take a few men and head for the control room. We need to know who's behind all this and why. Harper, stay with me. We're going to find answers." The team moved deeper into the station, their boots echoing through the empty hallways. The layout was complex, built to house military-grade equipment and research technology. As they made their way through the labyrinth of corridors, Jensen couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't just the shadowy corners or the flickering lights. It was something more. There was a presence in the station, something malevolent. Finally, they reached what was left of the control center. The room was cold and sterile, as if it hadn't been touched in years. Dust covered everything. But there were still signs of activity. Someone had been here recently. Cables were pulled out. Terminals had been powered down. And most notably, the main console was still active. A string of code ran across the screen, an ongoing transmission that seemed to be trying to connect with something far beyond the station. Harper approached the console with urgency, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I'm accessing the data now." "Wait. There's something strange here." Jensen watched closely. "What do you mean? What are we looking at?" Harper frowned, tapping a few more keys. This isn't just a regular communication. It's a backdoor system. Someone's been rerouting all signals through this station. Every communication, every message sent from Earth's high command. It's been tampered with. Jensen's heart sank. You mean? Harper nodded, confirming his worst fears. The traitors. They've been manipulating communications for years. They didn't just sell out humanity to the aliens. They've been leaking information, plans, secrets. This goes deeper than we thought. Jensen's mind raced as the implications hit him. Whoever had been working with the aliens wasn't just a few corrupt officials. They were deeply embedded in humanity's power structure, pulling the strings from the shadows. But why? Jensen asked, his voice filled with frustration. Why go this far? What do they want? That's the part I don't understand yet, Harper replied. But I found something else, an encrypted message buried deep within the system. It's short, but it could be a lead. Jensen's heart skipped a beat. Play it. Harper hit a few more keys, and suddenly the console came to life. A grainy, static-filled recording began to play. The audio was barely audible, but one word stood out, repeating itself over and over. Surrender. Jensen's face hardened. The message was clear enough. Someone wanted humanity to surrender. But who? And why? The sound of the word echoed through the cold, empty station, sending a chill down Jensen's spine. Harper, can you trace the source? He asked. I'm working on it, Harper replied, her eyes glued to the screen. But this is unlike anything I've seen. It's encrypted using an advanced alien algorithm. Whoever did this is using technology we've never encountered. Jensen's grip tightened around his weapon. Whoever was behind this was powerful, too powerful for a simple human traitor to have done on their own. The aliens were involved. That much was certain. But what was their endgame? Had they been controlling the traitors all along? Or was there something bigger at play here, something humanity had yet to understand? We need to move quickly, Jensen said, his voice steely. If the aliens are still out there, we can't afford to wait around. This message is the key, and we're going to find out who's behind it. The team began to move again, their pace quickening. Harper continued to dig into the encrypted message as they moved through the station, searching for anything that could lead them to the traitors or the aliens. The walls seemed to close in on them, the eerie silence broken only by the hum of distant machinery and the occasional sound of their footsteps. As they reached the outer section of the station, the power flickered. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut through with a knife. Jensen could feel it now. This wasn't just a search for traitors. This was a fight for survival. The Vanguard had been tracking them from the outside, but now the real hunt was on. Humanity was no longer at war with a distant alien force. They were at war with their own betrayal, and the stakes were higher than ever. Harper, any luck? Jensen asked, his voice tense. She looked up, her face grim. I've got something. The transmission originated from a location inside the station, but it's heavily guarded. We'll have to move fast if we want to catch whoever is behind this. The air in the darkened corridors of the station grew colder as Commander Jensen and his team moved forward. The unsettling silence weighed heavily on them, and each creak of the station seemed to echo louder in the stillness. It wasn't just the abandoned station they were dealing with now. They were deep in enemy territory. The traitors they hunted had been smart, using the station's remote location to shield their operations from prying eyes. But now, their actions had led Jensen and his team right to them. Harper had managed to pinpoint the source of the encrypted transmission, and it led them to an unassuming cargo bay on the lower levels of the station. On paper, it was just another storage area, but Jensen had a bad feeling about it. The fact that the message had been broadcasted from that location told him there was something far more sinister happening there. Every step felt like they were getting closer to a terrible truth. Keep your eyes open, Jensen warned as they approached the bay's entrance. This could be where they're hiding. No one moves without my command. The squad nodded, preparing themselves for whatever they might find. Sergeant Davis, the toughest of the group, led the way, followed by Harper, who continued to work with a handheld scanner, tracking any signal anomalies. They reached the door, and Jensen nodded for Davis to open it. The large metal door creaked as it slid open slowly, revealing an eerily empty room. Stacks of crates lined the walls, covered in a layer of dust, their contents unmarked. The lights were dim, and the air smelled stale, but nothing seemed immediately out of place. Jensen felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. It was too quiet. "Clear," Davis said, after checking the room thoroughly with his weapon drawn. But Jensen didn't feel relieved. Something was off. "Harper, any signs of life?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. But the readings are strange. It's like they're masking their presence. Whoever's behind this is using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. We're walking blind." Jensen didn't like it. If the traitors were hiding, this was exactly the place they would do it, somewhere where they could remain undetected. But the silence unnerved him. They should have found something by now. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a faint hum, barely noticeable, coming from the far side of the room. The team froze, their weapons raised, eyes darting to the source of the noise. "What the hell is that?" Sergeant Davis whispered. Jensen motioned for the squad to move toward the noise, taking slow, careful steps. The sound was growing louder, and the closer they got to the source, the more unnatural it felt. The air seemed to thrum with energy, and a strange, almost metallic smell filled the room. They reached a small access panel on the far wall. The humming was coming from behind it. Harper approached first, her fingers working quickly to unlock the panel. After a few tense moments, the cover popped open, revealing a set of wires and a complex series of glowing lights. "Looks like a power conduit," Harper said, studying the wires. "But there's something off about it. This isn't standard tech." Jensen knelt beside her, inspecting the setup. "It's a communication relay," he realized. "But it's not just a relay. It's transmitting on a different frequency. Someone's been using this station to send messages off-world, and it's been covered up. Whoever's behind this is hiding their tracks. Hard." Davis gripped his weapon tightly, his knuckles white. "You think they've been in contact with the aliens?" "More likely than not," Jensen replied, his voice grim. "Whoever these traitors are, they're in deeper than we thought. They've made deals with the aliens. This station is just the beginning. The real question is, where are they sending these messages?" Harper worked her scanner over the relay, trying to break through the encryption, but it was slow going. Time wasn't on their side, and Jensen could feel the urgency building. He glanced at his team. "We can't waste any more time. Harper, get that relay open. Davis, you're with me. We're going to find out who's behind all of this." As Harper continued to work on the relay, Jensen and Davis moved toward another door at the far end of the room. The walls were lined with more equipment, more tech that looked foreign and unfamiliar to them. The deeper they went, the more it became clear that the station had been repurposed. Its original purpose was secondary now. Whoever controlled this place had other plans, plans that involved secrecy, power, and destruction. Jensen's heart pounded in his chest. They were getting closer. The trail of traitors was becoming clearer, but it only raised more questions. What had they promised the aliens? Why did they feel the need to cover their tracks so meticulously? The weight of the situation pressed down on him, but there was no turning back now. The traitors had betrayed humanity, and they would pay for it. "Commander, I've cracked the code." Harper's voice broke through the tension, relief flooding her words. "I've got a location, a rendezvous point. It's an abandoned station on the edge of the galactic frontier." But the transmission didn't just go there. It's been rerouted again. Whoever's in charge of this, they've got allies across the stars. Jensen's mind raced. This wasn't just about hunting down a few traitors anymore. This was much bigger. Humanity was on the brink of being caught in a web of betrayal and alien influence that reached farther than anyone could have imagined. "Get the coordinates," he ordered. "We're not stopping until we get answers. No one betrays humanity and gets away with it." With renewed purpose, Jensen led his team out of the station. The first phase of the hunt was over. Now, it was time to track down the traitors and the aliens who had turned on them. This was no longer a simple military operation. It was a war for the future of humanity, and they were going to win. Jensen nodded, determination flooding his veins. "Let's move out. The traitors won't escape this time. We're going to find them, and we're going to make them pay." The hunt had truly begun, and there was no turning back. The cold void of space stretched endlessly before them as Commander Jensen's ship, the Spearhead, cut through the darkness at full speed. The coordinates Harper had uncovered were precise, and their destination was clear: the abandoned station on the edge of the galactic frontier. But the closer they got, the more ominous the mission became. This was not just a hunt for traitors anymore. It was a race to uncover a conspiracy that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Jensen stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the starfield ahead. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The traitors they were chasing had ties to something far larger than he had originally imagined. The fact that they had managed to stay hidden for so long, and that their communications had been so thoroughly concealed, suggested they were far more capable than anyone had given them credit for. "Commander," Harper's voice crackled through the comm, pulling him from his thoughts. "We're approaching the station. No signs of life yet, but there's a heavy energy signature coming from the surface. It's almost like they're waiting for us." "Understood," Jensen replied, his voice cold. "Prepare for landing. Davis, I want you and your team on the ground first. We need to make sure the station's secure before we move any further." "Aye, Commander," Davis responded, his voice steady. "We'll handle it." The Spearhead touched down gently on the station's surface. The hull of the ship groaned as it made contact with the cold metal beneath them, but there was no time to waste. The station was eerily silent, its once thriving corridors now hollow and lifeless. It had been abandoned for years, but something about this place felt different. It wasn't just the absence of life. It was the overwhelming sense that they were being watched. Jensen led the charge as Davis's squad disembarked first, scanning every corner with cautious eyes. The atmosphere felt thick, the silence deafening, but their mission was clear. They had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As they made their way deeper into the station, Harper's voice came over the comms again. "Commander, I'm picking up strange readings in the main control room. Whatever they're hiding, it's all converging there." Jensen motioned for the team to move forward. The main control room was only a few hallways away, but the closer they got, the more oppressive the silence became. Every step felt like they were walking deeper into a trap. The walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder as they advanced. They reached the control room, the door marked with an old, faded symbol, a mark that only those who knew the station's true purpose would recognize. Jensen's heart raced. This was it. They were about to uncover what the traitors had been hiding all along. "On my mark," Jensen ordered. He could see the tense expressions on his team's faces, but there was no room for fear. Not now. 3, 2, 1. The door slid open, revealing the control room in all its eerie glory. The walls were lined with ancient tech, humming with an unnatural energy. But what caught their attention immediately was the central console. It flickered to life the moment they stepped inside, the screen showing an encrypted transmission, the words garbled and unreadable. Harper was the first to step forward, tapping away at her wrist console. This is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's a direct connection to the alien network." Jensen felt a chill run down his spine. "The aliens." "Yes," Harper confirmed. "They're not just allies to the traitors. This is something deeper. They're feeding information, plans, technology, military strategy. This station is a hub for their entire operation. Jensen clenched his fists. The traitors had done more than just sell out humanity. They had given the aliens access to everything. The very fabric of human civilization was at risk. "We need to get the data off this terminal," Jensen said, his voice low with determination. "Davis, check the perimeter. Harper, break that encryption." As Harper worked tirelessly to crack the code, the rest of the team stood guard, eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Jensen's mind raced. How had it come to this? How had humanity allowed itself to fall so far? But before he could dwell on it further, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the room. The lights flickered violently, and a group of shadowy figures appeared in the doorway. Alien soldiers, their sleek, armored bodies almost blending into the dark. It was a trap. Davis's team raised their weapons instantly, but the aliens didn't move. Instead, one of them stepped forward, its glowing eyes locking onto Jensen with unnerving precision. "You should not have come here," the alien spoke in a voice that vibrated the air, low and mechanical. "The traitors were only the beginning. You've already lost." Jensen's grip tightened around his weapon, but he didn't fire. "I don't think you understand," he said coldly. "This is humanity's war now, and you're on the wrong side of it." The alien's lips curled into what could almost be considered a smile. "You will find that you are outmatched. We've already won." "You haven't won yet," Jensen replied, stepping forward. "And you won't. We'll make sure of it." The alien's expression shifted, and for a moment there was something like fear in its eyes. Jensen had just confirmed something. The aliens weren't as confident as they seemed. The traitors might have betrayed humanity, but they hadn't accounted for one thing: humanity's resolve. Before the alien could react, Harper finally broke through the encryption. "I've got it," she shouted. "The data's ours." The alien's eyes widened in realization. "No," it hissed. "You don't understand what you're doing." But it was too late. Jensen nodded to Davis, who ordered the squad to open fire. The battle that erupted in the control room was fierce, but the traitors' allies had underestimated humanity's strength. The data was secured, and the tide of the war began to turn. The hunt wasn't over, but the victory felt sweet, because now the traitors knew that humanity was coming for them. And this time, they wouldn't be able to escape. The spearhead blasted away from the station, leaving the smoldering ruins behind them. The control room had been secured, the data extracted, but the fight was far from over. Jensen stood at the helm of his ship, the weight of what they'd just discovered pressing heavily on his mind. The aliens were not just planning an invasion. They were orchestrating a galaxy-wide conquest, and the traitors who had worked with them were just the beginning. "We've got what we came for," Harper said, breaking the silence as she walked up beside Jensen. "But this is only one piece of the puzzle. The real challenge is what's coming next." Jensen turned to face her. The stormy look on her face mirrored his own. "I know. The information we've gathered will help us track the aliens' movements, but it's clear they're not just after us. They've been planning this for a long time." The data they'd acquired revealed a shocking truth. The aliens, far from being simple invaders, had been manipulating galactic politics for centuries, sowing distrust and division wherever they could. The traitors who had aided them were just pawns in a much larger game. It was a war on a scale humanity had never anticipated. But now, they knew the aliens' plans. Now they had a chance to stop them. "Where do we go from here?" Harper asked. "We've got the evidence, but we don't have the full picture yet. We need more intel." Jensen knew she was right. The traitors were scattered across the galaxy, and they had to be tracked down one by one. But they also needed to expose the alien forces hiding behind them. It was the only way to ensure humanity's survival. "We start with the traitors," Jensen said, his voice low and determined. "We'll hunt them down, take them out, and gather as much intel as we can. If we can stop them from working with the aliens, we can start turning the tide." He stared out into the vastness of space, a feeling of unease settling in his gut. Even though they had struck a blow against the aliens, the victory felt hollow. The war was far from over, and every victory would only be harder to achieve. Humanity was fighting not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy. "We've got work to do," Jensen said, turning back to Harper. "We don't stop until they're all gone." Harper nodded, her face set in determination. "Agreed. But we'll need allies if we're going to take down the rest of the traitors. We can't do this alone." Jensen thought about that for a moment. The war had already cost them so much. Trust was in short supply, and forging alliances was not going to be easy. But humanity had always survived by standing together. They had fought wars before, and they had always come out stronger. This would be no different. "We'll find them," he said finally. "The resistance, those who still believe in the fight. We need to unite the galaxy. We need everyone we can get on our side." Harper smiled grimly. "We'll make sure they know who's coming for them. The universe won't forget this war." The crew of the Spearhead was ready for what lay ahead. The road would be long, and the battles would be fierce, but humanity was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. They had just begun their fight, and they would stop at nothing to ensure their survival. The first traitor they hunted down had provided a crucial lead, and now they would follow that trail wherever it took them. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, but humanity's resolve was stronger than ever. As they set their course for the next target, Jensen felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It wasn't just the hope of winning the next battle, but the hope that they could still turn the tide of this war. The aliens had underestimated them, and that would be their downfall. With the data in hand, the Spearhead accelerated into the darkness, the crew prepared for the journey ahead. They had learned one thing in the past few days: humanity could take on the galaxy. And they were just getting started. The crew of the Spearhead continued their pursuit across the stars. Each new lead brought them closer to the remaining traitors, and with each victory, their confidence grew. But they knew the hardest battles lay ahead. Jensen leaned over the control panel, staring at the star map before him. They had just eliminated another traitor, but the aliens' network ran deep, far deeper than they had imagined. The traitors who had once been humanity's allies in the galactic community were everywhere, scattered like a virus infecting the very heart of the galaxy. Jensen knew the only way to end this war was to sever that infection at its source. "Commander," Harper's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and focused. "We've located a resistance cell on a nearby planet. They'd been tracking the traitors for a while, and it's time we made contact." Jensen's eyes narrowed. This could be the break they needed. If the resistance was as well connected as they claimed, they might be able to help tip the scales in humanity's favor. "Prepare the Spearhead for landing," Jensen ordered. "We'll meet them in person." The planet they were heading to was a harsh, barren world on the fringes of the galaxy, far from the eye of the alien invasion. But it was also the perfect place to hide. The resistance had made its home here, operating from the shadows, striking when they could, avoiding detection. As the Spearhead descended through the atmosphere, Jensen couldn't help but feel the weight of this moment. This wasn't just a new ally. This was a turning point. The galaxy was vast, but the human spirit was even more formidable. The resistance could be the key to finishing what they had started. Once they touched down, the crew was met by a small group of hardened soldiers, each with an air of silent resolve. The leader, a woman with short, black hair and a scar running down her cheek, stepped forward. "You must be Commander Jensen," she said, her tone flat but respectful. "I'm Captain Kara Alvar, leader of this cell." Jensen extended his hand, and the captain shook it firmly. "We've heard of your efforts. It's time we put an end to this madness." Captain Alvar glanced behind her, her gaze scanning the barren landscape. "It's not going to be easy. These traitors are everywhere, hiding in plain sight. But we know where they are, and we know how to find them." Jensen's heart quickened. This was the moment. We need your help. Together, we can take down the rest of the traitors and destroy the alien influence once and for all. The galaxy won't survive unless we unite and fight back." For a moment, the silence between them was heavy. Then Captain Alver spoke again, her voice quiet but filled with fire. "You're right. It's not just about fighting the aliens anymore. It's about taking our galaxy back. We'll fight with you, Commander. For humanity." Harper, standing beside Jensen, watched the exchange with growing hope. She knew the fight ahead would be the most challenging of their lives, but she also knew that humanity had the will to survive. It always had. "We'll need resources," Harper said, her eyes scanning the resistance members. "Supplies, allies, weapons. We can't fight a war like this on our own." "Don't worry," Captain Alver replied with a wry smile. "We've got that covered. You'll be supplied and supported. All we need from you is the same determination you've shown so far." Jensen nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling in his chest. The resistance had their trust. But it wasn't just about the next move. It was about making sure they were prepared for the long war ahead. "We'll work together to track down the remaining traitors and wipe out the alien influence. We're not stopping until we've won." The alliance between humanity and the resistance was forged, but the war was far from over. The battle for control of the galaxy would require everything they had, every ounce of their strength, their ingenuity, and their courage. "Let's get to work," Jensen said, his voice resolute. "We're going to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." As the spearhead prepared to depart from the barren planet, the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. The resistance had given them hope, and with that hope came a fire that burned brighter than ever before. They would take the fight to the traitors. They would show the aliens that humanity was unstoppable, that no matter the odds, they would never be defeated. And now, with the resistance on their side, humanity would rise up and reclaim its place in the galaxy. The hunt had only just begun, but the tide of the war was finally starting to turn. The galaxy had never seemed so vast, yet humanity felt the weight of every star, every planet they passed on their journey. With the help of the resistance, the hunt for the traitors had taken on a new momentum. They were no longer just a scattered band of fighters. They were an unstoppable force. The spearhead was ready, and the crew was determined. But nothing could have prepared them for the final confrontation. Jensen stood on the bridge of the spearhead, watching as the stars streaked past. The coordinates had led them to the heart of the traitor's stronghold, a heavily fortified base on a desolate planet far from the galactic core. This was it, the end of their journey, the final battle. "Commander, we've arrived." Harper's voice echoed through the bridge, breaking his thoughts. "We're in range of their defenses. They won't give up easily." Jensen clenched his fists. "I know, but we've come this far, and we won't stop until the traitors are eradicated. Prepare for full assault." The crew moved with purpose, their expressions hardening as the gravity of the moment settled in. Every battle up until now had led to this, the traitors' fortress, the heart of their operation, the place where they would make their stand. Harper issued orders, and the ship's weapons powered up. The sound of the engines hummed with the anticipation of a fight that would decide the future of the galaxy. The traitors had underestimated humanity for too long, and now they would face the consequences. Jensen turned to his crew, each person a vital part of the operation. "This is it, everyone. The final push. We've fought for our survival, and now we fight for our future, for humanity. Let's show them what we're made of." The tension was palpable as the spearhead moved closer to the planet's surface. They would need to breach the outer defenses first, a series of heavily armed defense platforms scattered across the planet's atmosphere. After that, they would land and move to confront the leadership of the traitor faction, the ones responsible for all the chaos and destruction. "Enemy ships incoming," one of the crew members shouted from the radar station. Jensen's heart raced. It was what they had been preparing for. The enemy had to know they were coming. But humanity wasn't afraid. Not anymore. All weapons online, Jensen commanded, his voice cold and steady. Take them down before they can call for reinforcements. The spearhead fired its first volley of energy blasts, lighting up the dark expanse of space around them. The enemy ships retaliated, but the spearhead's superior firepower and advanced technology quickly overwhelmed the traitor forces. One by one, enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "We're breaking through their defenses," Harper shouted as the spearhead cut through the hostile fleet, clearing a path toward the planet below. "Prepare to land, Commander." As the spearhead descended, the Resistance's ground forces were already in position, ready to storm the traitor stronghold. The battle for the planet would be brutal, but Jensen's confidence remained unwavering. Humanity had faced worse odds and had always found a way to fight back. When the spearhead touched down, the ground trembled beneath them. The crew suited up. The final moments before the assault were filled with silence as each person mentally prepared for the oncoming battle. The tension was thick, but it was also electrifying. They knew what was at stake. "We move in 10, Jensen said, looking at his team one last time. "Stay sharp. We can't afford mistakes." With weapons in hand and their resolve stronger than ever, the team stepped out of the spearhead, entering the alien-infested planet. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of the barren land filled their nostrils. But there was no turning back now. The traitors who had betrayed humanity had nowhere to run. As they advanced toward the traitor base, the sound of distant explosions and gunfire echoed in the air. The Resistance had already begun the fight, pushing back the traitor forces. But the real battle lay ahead. The confrontation with the leaders of the traitor faction, the ones who had orchestrated the war against humanity. The group moved quickly, cutting down enemies as they made their way through the base's security. It was clear that the traitors were caught off guard. The moment humanity arrived, their carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Jensen could almost hear the panic of the traitor leaders as they scrambled to protect themselves. Finally, they'd reached the central command center, where the remaining traitor leaders awaited. They had nowhere left to hide. Jensen's hand gripped his weapon tighter as he approached the door. He could feel the weight of history in this moment. This was where everything would end. The fate of the galaxy, the fate of humanity, would be decided in this room. The door to the command center slammed open. Inside, a group of high-ranking traitors stood, their faces pale with fear as they saw the human forces burst into the room. But they had made their last mistake. "You thought you could erase us," Jensen said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "But humanity never forgets, and now you'll pay for what you've done." A tense standoff ensued. The traitor leaders stood frozen, their arrogance now replaced by fear. They had underestimated humanity, and now they would face the consequences. The final act of the war had begun. "Fire," Jensen ordered, his voice unwavering. The battle was swift, brutal, and decisive. In a matter of minutes, the traitor leaders were no more. The war that had torn the galaxy apart was finally over. As the dust settled, Jensen looked out over the battlefield, the weight of the victory settling in. Humanity had survived. They had won. But the true meaning of their victory wasn't just in the destruction of the traitors. It was in the knowledge that humanity had risen from the ashes. They had been underestimated, but now the universe knew what they were capable of. "Let's go home," Jensen said, his voice quiet but filled with resolve. Humanity had proven that they could not be erased. They had shown the universe that no one, no matter how powerful, could ever take their place. And with that, the galaxy had been saved, not by superior technology or raw power, but by the indomitable will of humanity.